Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's about 1 o'clock here in Perth. My name is Gowri Duke, and this is where I teach, the University of Western Australia. This is our lovely campus in Perth. And this is where I teach, UWA Centre for English Language Teaching. Again, a lovely campus. This is my online class, and we did a research class together. And today, all right, just to give you a preview of what I'll be talking about, 3 main areas: the educational context, my AR question and subsidiary questions, and some takeaways. So you can read these details, right, which I will be covering under those 3 main areas. Okay, first, the educational context. I teach in the AESS, Academic English and Study Skills Bridging course. And one of the key components of this course is Research and Study Skills, RSS. It's a 10-week course, and in this course, students do secondary research on a topic of their choice, which is related to their discipline, and it involves 3 stages, as you can see here, which have their own steps, which culminates in a research paper of nearly 2,000 words. Now, the aim of this component of the bridging course is twofold. 1, to provide training in higher order critical thinking skills, and 2, to cultivate autonomous learners who are capable of assuming responsibility for their language learning, so that they can participate successfully in a university environment. As you can see, I have highlighted stage 1, which was the focus of my research. And this is a key stage of the RSS component. It's foundational, actually, to stage 2 and 3. And it covers basically 3 steps where students identify their research topic and construct their research question. They identify the sub-issues that will help them to answer the research question. And thirdly, they explain the research problem. Right. I'm not going to go into stage 2 and 3, but it's there to show you that what makes the whole component. Next, one of the reasons I started this research was because I've taught this program for some years now. And one of the reasons was the repetitive comments that I got from past cohorts. And you can see, you can have a read here. And all these comments show that students were basically unsure or at a loss as to how to progress into this process of research. And so I've put down here the problem from the student's perspective, 1, 2, and 3, and from the university's perspective as well. So you can see students have had no prior experience. They're learning, they're more used to traditional learning contexts where it's more teacher-centered than learner-centered, more passive learning than active learning, and they need support to complete the new tasks ahead of them in the RSS component. And from the university's perspective, how best to address the gap between where students are at, which is heavily dependent on teachers, and where they need to be, independent, autonomous learners. So that led me to thinking, and this is what I thought. Can an intervention like instructional scaffolding, IS, help? Now, so this was a question to myself, yeah? And from there, I went on to, I dug deeper and I went on to look at the theories that could inform my classroom research. And one of the main theories comes from Vygotsky. You may be familiar with ZPD, the zone of proximal development, and scaffolding. What Vygotsky holds is that social interaction within a learning community in this circle, yeah, and cognitive development are interrelated. So what he's saying is that when you interact with more knowledgeable others, like teachers, peers, technology, within this zone, your learning is enhanced and you are on your way to mastery of new skills. Moving on, I also looked at Bruner's work on instructional scaffolding, and Bruner holds that when support or scaffolds are appropriately structured to the student's level of learning, then there is much potential for increasing learner autonomy. And learner autonomy there is that students can think critically, they can make decisions on their learning, they can act independently and take responsibility for their learning. The third one, theory that I looked at was from Fisher and Frey, and they came up with a framework called the gradual release of responsibility. I think you can guess from this that the gradual release is from teachers to students so that they become more autonomous. And there are 4 interrelated phases. And I found that IS becomes more effective when teachers pay attention to these 4 phases. I do it, we do it together, you all do it together, you do it alone. And so that took me to my research question. What is the role of instructional scaffolding in developing learner autonomy in the online research and study skills classroom? Subsidiary questions was, I wanted to find out how effective peer group discussions were in cultivating autonomy. And secondly, whether the role of the teacher and learner is redefined in this context. These were my participants. As you can see, they come from different countries, and they were going to articulate into different disciplines in UWA. And these were my data collection methods: survey, breakout room discussions. Students put up their comments on the class discussion board on Blackboard, consultations, role play, and reflection. And these were the findings, right? As far as the preliminary survey went, most of the students, in fact, only one had some experience doing research, the majority had not, and they expressed some, that they were anxious about getting started. And also their preferred learning style was consultation with the teacher and lectures, and then to do their own research. So you can see that they weren't very open to the idea of group discussions or peer group discussions. So the next findings is all the stage 1 activities, yeah, where guides and models were given to students, modeling was done, think alouds were done, there was group discussion, all the discussions and reflection. And these were some of the comments I got from the students. They found it useful, and they came up with certain insights, as you can see, that they needed to be careful with the and even what they did during the discussions, and more insights, yeah. And going on to consultations, this was about 20 to sometimes extended to about half an hour for each student. It was one-on-one. And most, again, 83%, during the consults, I found that the research topic and question were clear. So were the focus questions and sub-issues. And if you remember step 3, which was description of the research problem, 66%, 67% said that 67% were clear. This is me reading their work, yeah? Were clear, relevant, and concise. The others, the 4 had some problems, and that meant adjusting the scaffolds to suit the level they were at. As far as the role play activity was concerned, again, a role play card was given, guide, modeling was done, 5-star rating scale was given because they did it in pairs, the students did it in pairs, and reversed roles. These were the comments. Yeah, it was very encouraging that they said they felt that they could go on to the next step. And as far as the 5-star rating or the scale went, all the participants, all 12, received 3 stars, which meant it was satisfactory. And 2 students received 4 stars and another 2 5 stars. So you can see, yeah, 3 is satisfactory, 4 very clear, 5 stars, excellent. And they gave reasons because they could understand. They thought the description of the problem and question, research question, was clear, and that it was clearly connected and logical. So I would like to sum up the findings through this visual here. What I found was how instructional scaffolding contributes to learner autonomy. So in this first circle, you see instructional scaffolding. It's learner-centered support to bridge gaps in knowledge and skills. It's ongoing, it's temporary, and it's not meant to be permanent. Scaffolds are removed just as you would when a building is constructed, yeah? And depending on, sometimes some students need further support while others can progress, right, to independence, where the independent stage where they are able to successfully apply some of the newly learned knowledge and skills to their own research. And this is an ongoing process because you move from the second circle back to the first one when there are gaps. And finally, there is learner autonomy, and autonomy is when they are able to fully apply the newly learned knowledge and skills to their own research. So at this stage, they can critically evaluate their work. They think about what they are doing and how best to do it. And they have not only have ownership, but also control of their learning. Moving on. So the conclusions, if you remember the first, my research question and the subsidiary questions, right? So these conclusions address those questions. Instructional scaffolding certainly plays a significant role in developing learner independence and subsequently autonomy. Peer group discussions can be instrumental in cultivating learner autonomy, and the shift in the learner and teacher role is evident in that learners become more independent, autonomous, while the teacher plays the role of facilitator, empowering students in their learning. So what are some of the takeaways from this research? I find that firstly, you need to gauge your students' ZPD, the zone of proximal development, so that you can adapt scaffolds to individual learners. You need to ask open-ended questions, like during the consults or during discussions, whole class discussions, to encourage learners to think and learn rather than giving them the answers. Another takeaway is determining the right amount of support can be tricky, can be difficult. Because if you give too much support, then you create passive learners, which is exactly the opposite of what you set out to do. Next, checks to ascertain learner independence and autonomy need to be regular. And you can do that during the consults. Finally, peer groups should comprise members with mixed abilities, and you'll be able to see this fairly clearly right after the first consult. And learners who access the online resources, we have online resources. It's like a self-access center, guides where there are guides, recorded lectures, exemplars. So learners who accessed these materials online show more independence and autonomy. So that brings me to, what about your own context? You may not all be teaching research and study skills. I think instructional scaffolding can be useful whenever there are new skills and concepts to learn, whenever there are higher order critical thinking skills, whenever these sorts of skills are needed, where the production stage requires learners to make decisions, and in task-based or project-based learning contexts. These were my references, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Gowri. If you have any questions for Gowri, please pop them into the Q&A box. Gowri, there is one question.
Yeah.
How did you deal with those students who still needed more scaffolding?
All right. I went back to the scaffold that I had originally given the whole class. And then, because it involves step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say, right? There are 5 steps to accomplishing a task. So I went to the step where they were stuck at, where they couldn't progress to the next. And from there, I developed a simpler scaffold visual, and got them to go through it with me first, and then because I had like about 4 students who had difficulty, and I put them together in a group, a breakout room, and got them and watched them discuss. After I'd gone through, modeled it, think aloud, thought aloud, did think alouds with them. So that way, I got the students to say they understood, or they didn't, or the extent to which they understood. So it was sometimes retracing the steps. So that's what I did with them.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, the think
and
alouds.
Apparently it helped.
Yeah, okay, good. It was helpful. Yeah, the think alouds can be really telling sometimes, I think, can't they?
Yeah, because you're mimicking the thought process that the student researcher needs to go through, or can facilitate their going to the next step.
And Gowri, you were speaking about the positive impact of mixed ability groups. So you obviously were using them in your classes. How did the students respond to those mixed ability groups? In terms of, the stronger students and the weaker students, how did they feel about that?
All right. The students were actually very good about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the stronger students felt this is a waste of my time. In the preliminary survey, and from information from past cohorts, students have said, I don't see how this is, really relevant. I prefer to work on my own. And, when it came to group discussions, but in this case, they didn't think so. Although they had not put group discussions as their preferred learning style, they found that it helped them to just articulating what they had understood, helped them to understand their research directions. That was for the stronger students. And for the weaker students, they could ask questions that filled those gaps in their knowledge or their understanding of how do I go about this? What do I do next? What's the next step? How can I approach it? So they found it useful in that sense. And besides, it was that the atmosphere, the environment was collaborative, and there was no pressure. They felt there was no pressure, and they didn't feel that guilty, taking up somebody's time or whatever. They enjoyed the sharing because there was mutual benefit.
Wonderful. Thanks for that answer.
Yep.
I think that's it for questions for you, Gowri. But thank you again for presenting your research today.
Thank you, Sophie.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for coming along. We'll be opening the expressions of interest for people to participate in the 2023 Action Research Program in November this year. And I've just popped the link into the chat for where you can find out more information about that after November. It'd be great if some of you here today are thinking about joining the program next year. Go along and have a look at the website for more information. Also, I popped in the chat the brochure, which has a summary of all of this year's projects. And of course, next year, the presenters who you've seen during this year's Action Research Colloquium will publish their reports in the Cambridge Research Notes Journal. And I'll just pop the link to the Cambridge Research Notes Journal in the chat now as well. So look out for them there. Once again, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you to Cambridge, and thank you to everybody for coming along. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.